Holby City review with spoilers, high emotions and a shock ending. This was one of those Holby City episodes that starts at the end and then flashes back. First we saw Fletch looking at someone who was unconscious in a hospital bed and clearly in a bad way. We didn't see who it was, and then the action went back to 9 hours previously. Fletch had another day of trying to juggle the demands of his job with the competing demands of his family. His job isn't made any easier by having Jac Naylor on his case all day long, but she was justified in getting angry with him on this occasion because every time her back was turned he would end up in a darkened room having a deep and meaningful conversation with his daughter or his father. Fletch told Jac that he wanted to make peace with Stephen. "Then I'd prepare for war," she said. "He seems like bad news." Of course Jac's own history of having long-lost relatives turning up hasn't usually ended well, so it's understandable she'd be wary. It all culminated in Fletch and Jac having a massive and savage argument. Evie, meanwhile, despairing of ever getting her dad to take her seriously, roped in Serena to mediate. This was a beautiful scene, as Evie told Fletch that she was tired of playing mum to her younger brothers and sister. Fletch's eyes filled with tears. As ever, Macy Chipping and Alex Walkinshaw played off each other perfectly. Indeed, Alex Walkinshaw was stunning throughout the episode. He's perfectly tuned into his character. It turned out that Fletch didn't know the whole story about when Stephen left him when he was a baby. For a start, Stephen was only 14 when Fletch was born. For people who were complaining last week that Jessie Birdsall is only 12 years older than Alex Walkinshaw, the casting department know what they're doing. When Fletch's mother couldn't cope, Stephen had tried to look after little Adrian himself, but he was so young and he had a girlfriend who wasn't safe to be around a baby due to drugs or alcohol or both. Stephen felt he had to leave for Fletch's own safety. So knowing this and knowing how much it means to Evie, Fletch has given his father a chance. He wants him to apply for a job as a porter and prove that he can be a stable and regular presence in the lives of his grandchildren. Then he went to make peace with Jacob in her office. A water bottle on its side was dripping onto the floor, ominously. Fletch saw Jac unconscious. The crash team was summoned, Jac was intubated and suddenly we were back where we started, and Jac Naylor was the mystery figure in the bed. As a worried Fletch was joined by Professor Doom. "We have to worry about what the future holds for Jacob elsewhere." Saka gave Essie the news that her cancer is in remission. He couldn't help the tears from flowing with sheer relief. Essie decided that she wants to get back to work as soon as possible, hurrah, but in the meantime she busied herself with trying to convince Professor Gaskell to take on the case of Josh, her friend Julie's son who was disabled after a sporting accident. Josh had previously been considered for the trial but rejected, but this time the professor decided to accept him. Whether he'll revise this decision after he's found out what's wrong with Jac, we'll have to wait and see. On AAU, Lofty and Dominic's heads were full of what Dominic called wedmen. Carol Copeland was assisting from afar with the wedding plans by sending a bulging scrapbook of ideas, which involved lace and tassels. There was an outbreak of MRSA on the ward, which meant everybody who'd been in contact with a particular patient had to be found and tested. Unfortunately, Lofty had transferred 3 of them off the ward and couldn't remember where they'd gone. Tracking them down involved asking the original patient for clues and getting Donna to do a spectacularly poor identikit drawing of one of them. All of this was enough to make Dominic wonder whether Lofty was really marriage material. Maybe it was his own nerves kicking in, because by the end he was quite happily convinced that he did want to marry Lofty after all. When they talked about what they really wanted their wedding to look like, they found their ideas were very similar, small, intimate, with friends and family and as soon as possible. Which sounds adorable, but let's hope the happy celebrations aren't overshadowed by any tragic events from elsewhere in the hospital. Sue Hasler is the author of the official Holby City book, which you can read about here. She also writes novels and there's more about her latest here.